Gabarjabat. Hi. Welcome to the second season of our Liberland in Georgia podcast that is dedicated to the business perspective here in Georgia. Today, I invited as a guest Andrew. Thank you so much for coming, Andrew. And he is one of the expats and blockchain fintech people here in the country. We will talk more about it shortly. But first, I would love to thank to the Franklin Club where we are shooting. I would love to thank you guys incredibly for enabling us to make this happen. If you don't know Franklin Club, so they're a liberal think tank dedicated to the political and economic studies here in the country. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And let's go. Welcome here, Andrew.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
First, I would love to ask you, what projects are you currently involved in?
Okay.
I know. Okay, maybe this will be long, but
yeah,
it's yours because,
Yeah, no, I thank you. And thank you also to Franklin Club. It's my first time here. It's like very amazing to see like this kind of a club in the University of Georgia. And it's really kind of cool being here, very comfortable. So thank you to the team and to the staff and everyone. So hi, I'm Andrew Thornhill. I am an American that's been living in Georgia full-time since 2016. I first came to Georgia in 2007. I mainly focus on Fintech. So when I first came in 2007, I was helping a bank, one of the bigger banks here, get involved in online merchant card, credit card processing.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for an Australian company at the time, and so I was the only one in the company that spoke Russian, and so they asked me to fly here. But when I got here, everyone spoke English, so it was very easy. So we started business, and it was actually very, very successful. And so I kind of inherited the country and came back a lot. So I've been here a lot. I've been here on and off for quite some time, and I have definitely fallen in love with Georgia, and so I'm involved in a lot of projects here. So the country has been very kind to me, and I try to invest back into the country a lot and create jobs and bring attention to this neat little country. My main work is in financial technology and in specifically blockchain aspects of that. So I'm working with e-money and MyCoins, the largest exchange and digital wallet in the country, to pivot them towards becoming an actual bank. So we're applying for a digital bank license in the near term. And so I work directly with them. I'm one of the board members of the group that owns them. And I have other like fintech type projects in the country. I also do a lot of most of my income comes from outside of Georgia. And I've never once actually taken one lorry out of any of my Georgian companies.
Wow.
But in Georgia, I'm involved with sustainable production, let's say. And to me, sustainability is more than just natural foods and natural wine and whatnot, and local sourcing. It's also about creating a healthy profitability in a space that pays a decent wage, above average wage, to people that are passionate about what they do. So I have a cafe in Lower Vera. I'm with a group of people that invested in a cafe in Lower Vera that's quite popular, Bagelin. So people kind of like that, and that's owned by a company called Saidana, and Saidana is a natural charcuterie business in Georgia, run by my good friend Nathan, who is very passionate about local sourcing and sustainability. And so we go through a pig or two a week, and 100% of that pig is used by us, or the carcass is then given to a bear sanctuary at the end. So it's all about making sure that we're locally producing. We don't use any antibiotics or drugs, and that stuff.
Yeah.
And then also I'm invested in a natural wine company run by some women in Emirati called Baya's Wine. And again, that's just an incredible company of this young family that's making natural wine, and we're selling it all over the world. So pretty cool. I also have a brewery in Sabratello that's run by a DAO. And so I believe it's the first DAO in Georgia, a decentralized autonomous organization. So we're experimenting with tokenizing corporate assets.
Mm-hmm.
And we brew weekly beer that's sold wholesale to the pub Olva, which is owned by my Czech friend. is Denmark.
All right.
And so we make craft beer in a small volume, but beautiful, wonderful beer. We actually had our first, not public brewing, but like our first like company-wide brewing yesterday. We started brewing, I think, in early December, late November, early December. Very, very exciting. And again, all natural. Everything is fully natural. Unfortunately, a lot of the ingredients for beer we have to import because Georgia doesn't have that capability. But we are working with groups to grow specific hops here in Georgia and whatnot. And so we're hopeful that as beer becomes more successful and more popular in Georgia, that many of these ingredients will be grown here. But again, we have only natural ingredients, and it's a very hands-on process. No additives, no nothing. We make a variety of craft beers. But then also with sustainability, I have an accounting company to keep track of some of the different assets that I have in country, and to do this in a healthy way. Georgia is a very easy place, and I think you'll talk about this, to open up a business and to set up shop. And it's very, very open for people doing this, and it makes it, there's a lot of processes in place to make this even easier, let's say, than in the US or whatnot. But the accounting can be a little bit problematic if you don't speak Georgian, which I don't, unfortunately. And so I started a small accounting company to manage that, which then grew quite significantly, and then with a colleague bought one of the largest accounting companies here in Georgia for expats. So we're geared for that. So yeah, pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder about, what to begin with, because this is impressive. Like your involvement in the country is crazy. And what you mentioned, I feel the same. I'm like, I love the country. How can I give back? Like I'm
That's
so
important.
grateful for the opportunities that are here, just the environment that is friendly, welcoming, warm. I feel like it's very easy to integrate here.
Yes, very much so. I'm very happy here. Very, very comfortable. I live in a nice part of town. I have a place that's open for parties, and I have a lot of Georgian friends and foreign friends, and so I'm very, very comfortable here.
Yeah. I mean, the more I travel, the more I understand that this is not like something to take for granted, because I think this is one of the very few countries that is not so multicultural, I would say, but yet, it's like very welcoming, and they're happy for everyone coming. And I remember when I moved in 2020, and they were like, wow, you're here for a month already? You want to stay here? This is so lovely. They're grateful for you being
very
here.
Happy, yeah.
This is so nice.
Yeah. In Georgia, they don't talk about cultural appropriation. It's more about cultural use and display. And so in the US, I am very, very tiny part Native American, Cherokee. My mom is much closer to this community and whatnot. And so I've never really explored much of that, to be honest. But if I were to show up at a party with an Indian headdress on in the US, people would they go crazy. Whereas in Georgia, I've often shown up in the national dress to black tie events, like in the choka, which is, the stylized costume of, but formal, of the ancient Georgian, warriors.
I love it.
A sword,
I
everything.
love how it looks like.
And I'd be nervous. Actually, when I first wore that, I was a little bit nervous that the Georgians would be like, "Why are you wearing that?" Because in the U.S., that would be a thing, and the U.S. is complicated about that. We have a complicated story about that, and there's reasons behind the different feelings. But in Georgia, they were so happy. They were like, "Oh my God, you're wearing a choka!" And they showed me how to draw the sword properly and to lace the boots the right way. It's just a very different. In fact, it quite funny. I wore it once to an event where the U.S. ambassador was at, and so I had to go through, the X-ray machines at the Radisson or at the Biltmore. I can't remember. And I was like, "Oh my God! Why am I? I'm wearing a sword?" And but they're putting the sword through the X-ray, and the Marines, the U.S. Marines, were just like, "You can't wear that." And the Georgians are like, "Actually, you can," because there's a rule apparently in Georgia that national dress, unsharpened. Sword is allowed to be worn in these environments, and so it was, and I was just and they're like, well, don't poke anyone. I'm okay. I'll be really, really careful with my sword in a formal event. It was really funny. So Georgia has a great understanding of how to display culture, and one of the hottest areas of the city is downtown in the old town. In amongst the ruins. and you can party and dance and have fun with your friends and drink some beer and wine. At the meantime, while you're staring up at these things that are centuries older than my country, which is crazy. Yeah, it's a really unique experience. Yeah. Nice.
Just to add on, how do you feel as, let's say, as an American being here?
Well, this is I'm very comfortable, and so Americans aren't always liked everywhere that they go, and indeed, they're loud Americans aren't liked anywhere. But Georgia is a country that has a very strong affinity to the United States. Many people here speak English.
Yeah.
In fact, unfortunately, I don't speak Georgian, but all of my staff speaks fluent English. In fact, they usually know English better. They're like, "Oh, don't you put a indefinite article in front of that?" And I was like, "Maybe, I don't know." And so so it's a country where being an American is closer to a celebrity than a pariah, and that has certainly made it easier to be here. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your honest feelings. Related to what you already mentioned, starting a business here in the country, it's proven it's one of the easiest in the world. How did you feel about it, overall? Or would you maybe actually provide it in context with the US? I think that would be an interesting comparison for people to understand.
Well, okay, so it's my understanding that that the public service hall, which you probably have talked about on your podcast, is this wonderful building that looks like either a rose or a mushroom or something.
It's mushroom.
And it's just this incredible place where you can go and get driver's license or a marriage license or buy a business or sell a business or open a bank account or start a company or register land. Or all the things you can do there. Weddings also, yeah. And so I am quite fortunate. I work closely with the National Bank of Georgia and also the Ministry of Economy, and both are right there. So I can literally go from one to the other and set up a company in between. It's just incredible. But when I first came and I first opened a company in 2000 and I want to say 9 or 10, I can't remember, but it was a while ago. I went with a Georgian friend, and he was like, "So you see, we have this like you have in America." And I was like, we don't really have that in America. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And so I don't know if this is true, but he told me that an American academic person that was geared towards government integration and whatnot had helped advise on the setup of that, the flow of that. And so he was like, "Well, certainly you have this in Chicago." And I was like, "This is maybe what we'd like to have in Chicago, And I'm not going to say this difficult in Chicago, but you have to go to different places, different things, but here it's all together, and I'm like, this is what an academic person would design for the best flow, the workflow of doing all the services in one. But we don't really have something like that in the U.S. And so it's an amazing place. It's an absolutely incredible place. And so in fact, one of the corollary projects that I have, mainly in blockchain, is distributing some of those services to the local communities through using blockchain and whatnot. And so, basically taking that, which is already amazing, and making it even a tiny bit better and more accessible to people in the villages and whatnot. So, it's pretty easy, pretty incredible. Yeah, pretty incredible. Yeah. In fact, I was there so much from 2010 to 2013 or so. That I knew all the staff, and you used to be able, I don't think anymore, but you used to be able to do everything that you do by standing in line. You could actually also do with the cafe that was there. There was a cafe called the Justice or the Just Cafe, and you could get some of the best Ukrainian food in the city and also just take a ticket and wait, and you'd have lunch, and then they had a little, a computer on a cart, and they'd come over and they'd be like, "What do you want to do?" And I'd be like, "I want to open a company, sell that company, close that company, and my friend wants to get a driver's license." And they're like, "Okay," and they would do it all right there while we're having lunch. It was crazy. Yeah, wow. But since COVID, they've closed the Just Cafe, and I was last in the public service hall a few weeks ago. I don't recall. I don't think that it was open, but hopefully one day it'll open up again.
Oh yeah. Well, today the more and more services are being anyway online.
Online, absolutely.
So that's another thing. I think this is the core reason why we in Tbilisi have just one building for everything, because you don't need to go somewhere else. Most of the things you can do online. And by the way, I don't know whether you know, but this is actually interesting, so that is the only country, if you have a local residency, you can get a notarius, you can give him like the right to get you the apostille online.
I remember I was part of an apostille process once that used Skype, a Skype call.
Yes. This is the thing.
But even that was like, trying to get an apostille in the U.S. That the only thing that I would say that's like my kind of tiny little nitpick thing is that as a foreigner living in Georgia, I have to apostille many documents when working with foreign documents. And
that's normal.
Well, maybe, but like getting an apostille in the U.S. is a freaking pain in the butt, like big time. And it's not super easy, and like it's not as easy to get an apostille in the U.S. as it is to get here, let's say. And so that makes sometimes things a bit more difficult. But I did not know that. I believe you fully, and it's incredible. I want to try it later today somehow, maybe.
Yeah, but exactly what you mentioned, like so that you get it through via Skype. So this is exactly the thing. You cannot do this anywhere else in the world.
No, come on, it's incredible. No, of course not.
Yeah.
Now you can order. I have ordered multiple apostille documents in the U.S. online without being there at all. But again, for us, the apostille is a kind of a complicated document. That's like
okay, yeah. Like for example, when you give a power of attorney to someone else to give something on your behalf, so you have to sign it.
Yeah.
And this process, like they couldn't notarize it in any other country, but in Georgia they can via Skype.
I'm not surprised. I mean, it's incredible. The country is very forward-leaning, and there's a lot of really amazing, things that are here that are quite progressive in that space. And, so I'm not at all shocked. So.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm wondering because you have been cooperating on this like governmental. Like with government, first, like feel free to share whatever you feel might be interesting, but like maybe from the blockchain perspective, how do you find that the government is like blockchain friendly? Because the legislation is like very good, and at the same time, I find Georgia pretty innovative.
Yes.
And also the banks are like crypto friendly, like you can withdraw.
Becoming more friendly, sure.
Yeah, you can withdraw. Okay, like. To provide the European perspective, in Europe, you will have problems if you withdraw your cash to your regular bank account from your crypto exchange. Here, no, it's a normal thing.
Yeah, it's relatively normal. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I am also the Cardano representative of the country of Georgia. It's an unpaid volunteer position where I'm pushing like enterprise level solutions, for Georgia. And so from that, I'm working directly with the wine agency, which is under the Minister of Agriculture. So we have the first ever in the world third-party track and trace. So it's a project where we can, you have a bottle of wine. We started with bias wine in Emirati, actually, a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago. And now we have a pilot project in Bolnisi, which is where I was this morning. In fact, I've got a bottle of wine for you, but my assistant she's actually pinging me right now to try to bring it to you as a gift. So, we're basically utilizing blockchain to be the anchor public database for verifying transportation data, logistical data for wine. And so when you take a bottle of wine and you have a special sticker on it, you scan it with your phone and it automatically opens up a web page that gives you the story of not just that winery, but that actual bottle of wine that you have. So it's a numbered bottle, and you can see when it was harvested, when the fermentation was, what the certain aspects of the wine. Puts you in contact with the winery, so you can open a communication directly with them, and we're doing this to protect the appellation, the Bolnisi appellation. And so this is step one of a pilot project with the wine agency, which Cardano is powering, along with ScanTrust. And next year we're supposed to do Racha and Bolnisi, and then Kaketi. And so it's a multi-year project to eventually cover all more than 100 million bottles of wine.
Wow.
And Georgia not only is the first ever to do this, to ever have any third-party track trace, but Georgia is the first actual, government to engage in it as a enterprise level, and they already have a plan to track all of the wine in Georgia, and this is important in many ways for fighting counterfeit wine, but also for protecting appellations that are defined in Georgia, and the wine agency is fully aware of these problems that are out there and whatnot, and so they're actively working for that. So I find, answer your question, it's a long answer, but I find that Georgia is very open for this type of solution if you provide them like a plan, and so the plan should also include some aspect of funding or access to funding or something that could be sustainable over time. And so when I did the first project with Bias Wine a couple years ago, and I knew the then Minister of Agriculture, Liberland, and he actually asked me to demonstrate this product to him at the Ministry of Agriculture over in, I think it's Didube area. And I went in and I had this whole presentation plan, and I was a little bit nervous, because I want to do these things. And by the way, I'm unpaid, right? So I have no, it's not like I'm getting some award. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this presentation to the government. And Levon was so intelligent, so smart, that I was 3 or 4 minutes into the presentation. He's like, okay, I get it, I'm done, I want it.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, but I've got a whole video and everything. Yeah. He's like, no, it's okay. I know what this is. And he's like, does it work? And I brought a bottle of wine from Bias. I gave it to the ministry as a gift. He scanned it. He's like, yep, this is what I want. He's like, I want to do a pilot project immediately. And so, okay,
wow.
Great, let's do it.
So low bureaucratic.
So, but then he got moved from Minister of Agriculture to the Minister of Economy. So now he's talking about tokenizing more aspects of Georgian, economy. And he got to meet Frederick, the CEO of Cardano, in Zurich. Actually, not long after that meeting, he was in Switzerland voting on some carbon credit issue. And then Georgia, there was Minister of Culture. I can't remember, but there was a Georgian corner in Zurich, and so he was there to open up a wine shop there, and so he's very, very, very active. And so he was all in. And so now I'm bidding on some bigger projects, let's say, on enterprise level stuff in Georgia. So,
Wow.
Yeah, very exciting. Again, all voluntary, I'm very, very happy to just help Georgia be better Georgia, somehow, in a way. So,
and it really makes the country to stand out in the world.
I think it does, absolutely.
Because
it's on the map. Yeah.
This is impressive. Of course, the culture, the nature, the food, people. We all know this because that's why we are here.
Yeah, sure.
But then you start exploring the layers that are here, that you can experience on the everyday basis, and this is impressive, really. Do you find any other some kind of such innovation here?
I would say differences. Yeah, I mean, innovation, yes, because you see this kind of stuff happening at banks and and at larger institutions, and you see willingness of other ministries that want to do something, to either digitize documents or sign things or all this kind of stuff. But I also I just see Georgia as being unique, and different in a good way in this space. And so, for example, I actually came to Georgia never really drinking alcohol, so it's not something that was really part of me, my family and whatnot. And I had a problem with it when I was much younger, and so I just didn't touch it. But as I moved to Georgia, and I spent time in Russia and in Romania and I lived in Latvia. I had an office in Prague for a while. I lived in Australia, all these different places around the world. Yeah. But I just never really got used to the drinking culture part of it. But when I came to Georgia, I had a bit more free time and more to spend culturally and whatnot. And so I started dabbling a little bit in this natural wine movement, right? And so this amber wine, this idea of having the skin contact stuff,
wow,
with the strong tannins, and I liked it a lot, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And so then, and a lot of my friends back home in the States were like, oh, wow, you're drinking wine now. I want you, next time you come through, I want to show you a bottle of wine. And so I learned how to drink wine in Georgia. So I go back to the US and I'm and my friend's like, oh, I want to show you this big cab, from California. And I tasted it and I was like, oh, this is awful. this is terrible. And so then I give them a bottle, of wine from Georgia, and they're like, well, this is very different. And so it's that wine can be so incredibly different and unique that it's you can't even really describe it, right? So and I'm not a wine person, even though I'm active in a winery. I understand the process, but I don't understand. I can't tell you the taste, profiles and all those kind of things. I'm not that kind of person. But I know I like bold Georgian, Qvevri wines, and I'm not really crazy about any factory wine anywhere, including Georgia. And I absolutely, don't even have a flavor profile that I appreciate for wines from France and Italy. These things that are not the deep wines that have an incredible culture, but a $10 bottle of wine from the store. Yeah. I'm just going to be like, oh, it's terrible. I'd rather have a bottle of wine, from that some neighbor made, in a Qvevri in Georgia. And so innovation, not so much, but sticking to what works and what's natural is incredible. And then being able to display and advertise or market that difference to the world, I think Georgia's getting pretty good at it. And so it's more about that, right? And so with my blockchain project, I don't want to disturb or change how wine is made. I want to impact the crazy, convoluted ways that wine is sold, which is very complicated. And the things that separate the winery from the end user, right? So all these steps in between that have separation. I'm trying to close that gap a bit more, right?
Nice.
Especially when it comes to showing sustainability and actually in the field processes that can be demonstrated to an end user but you need more space on a bottle than just what you get, and so using technology to open that up kind of thing. So yeah.
Very nice. My impression is that Georgians just do everything with love.
They do a lot with love, yeah.
And this is their, I think, added value a lot into everything they do. Yeah.
Passionate, yeah. There's passionate drivers, let's say. Honk a lot. Yeah, honk a lot. In fact, when I go back to the States and I see my parents and I'm taking my mom to somewhere, she's like, stop driving like that. And I'm like, what am I doing? She's like, you're driving like a Georgian. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry that I honked. Sorry, it was a bit aggressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they
Who
passionately
knows?
they passionately do that.
That's true.
It's not uncommon. I remember when I first moved here, I'd be at a restaurant and all of a sudden Georgians would start singing. It's like a normal restaurant. And I'd break out my phone and I'm taking a video and my Georgian friends are a little bit embarrassed, but they do everything with passion, it's incredible. It's really, really something. Yeah. And so then that's unique. You don't start singing in a restaurant in the US, it's not something that you do. So
nice.
So,
yeah. Maybe getting back slightly to your core kind of focus, Fintech. Fintech in Georgia, how do you perceive it? Especially in the kind of wider perspective? Huh.
So I think that I've lectured at the design school, which is inside this compound, and I gave a lecture on something about the structure of money, the structure and value of money, in that I talk about what Georgian it's to young Georgian kids, and I'll say, hey, what do you think about your banking in Georgia, and how do you rank it between 1 and 10, and especially if you think what banking is outside of Georgia. Yeah. And most Georgians will be like, oh, I hate the banks here. They're awful, blah, blah, blah. The reality, unfortunately for them, is that the level of banking service here is quite high. And the level of technology inside the banks is also quite high. And the problem is that, maybe someone they know got turned down from a loan or something they had one bad experience, and so they translate that across the sector. But generally speaking, the level of fintech penetration in terms of use case of tapless payment and total cards per individual. I'm not talking about abuse of these things, but I'm talking about understanding how the technology works by the average Georgian is extremely high. And compared to the world, it's very high. So it's an easy place to test bed and to sandbox different products because Georgians are quick for innovation. The first time I ever ordered a hamburger, from McDonald's online from a touchscreen was here in Georgia, and it's I explained to my Georgian friends, we don't have this in the US. And they're like, wow, how is that possible? I'm like, well, it's because Georgia's a perfect sandbox to test and unroll these things because Georgians are very happy to try new technology. I see, grandmas on the street loading up their SIM card, on like these kiosk terminals on the street.
Yeah.
And I have friends from the States that visit me and they're like, what are they doing? And I'm like, it's complicated, but like that's a payment terminal. And like grandma is loading probably her phone or she's paying for her grandkid's phone or something, that she's doing. And she's just tapping away at it, boop, 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 and puts in 5 lari and boop, 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 and my friends are just like, they have absolutely no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you have to have this understanding that the level of technology and access to technology in Georgia is quite high. And Georgia was one of the highest miners, let's say, of Bitcoin. They have one of the biggest, delineation of cryptocurrency mining that's outside of Bitcoin, and so Ethereum mining and whatnot is quite high, in so much that the World Bank, even in 2017 or 18, figured that one out of some 7 or 8 people in Georgia either were mining or knew someone that was mining.
Oh.
Whereas if I try to explain this activity to my family back in the States, it's like they have a glazed over look. It's not because they're dumb, but because they just don't have access to that kind of level of technology. So, very long answer. I think fintech, especially now with Georgia adopting European banking accords, and like open banking accords and whatnot, and having buy-in from the pillar banks here, having the National Bank of Georgia pushing actively into the space. I think Georgia is very, very active. There's a lot of things I would like to see differently, for sure. But generally speaking, I think that fintech in Georgia is quite high. I'm a little bit surprised that we haven't seen like a true fintech unicorn emerge from Georgia, but I think that's happening. I think that that is also in the space, and so I am quite active in the startup community here in Georgia, and either advising people or investing or doing whatever I can to support these innovations. And so I think fintech is if you're interested in that space, being in Georgia is not a bad place to be.
Damn, I never even noticed, but you're right. Like I travel a lot, at least usually like 10, 15 countries a year. And I travel half of the year from the year. And you're right that you don't have such concentration of like Bitcoin or Bitcoin ATMs, so many blockchain projects, so many, it's just everywhere. It just surrounds you every day. And I think that if I would ask random people, they would be like, yeah, there are some Bitcoin stuff and there were some miners in Svanetsia and so on. And
even that, even if they have some of that narrative not totally accurate, they're aware of it. Like they know this is happening. They know that Gildani was one of the first places, to have, Bitcoin miners, and they've heard the word, they've heard Bitfury, one of the largest corporate miners, in the world. And what sometimes I think Georgians don't understand is that because Bitfury was one of the first in that space, the people that were there in the beginning are now doing amazing things. They're building projects, in Iceland and in Canada and the U.S., and they're advising on projects in Georgia. And some of the largest wallets and exchanges in Georgia are owned by people that had direct relations with Bitfury or more. These are people that were successful in that space and they have broadcast that success to the world, and the world was very eager to have them come in. And so Georgians, have designed, mining centers and data centers all over the world because they're good at it, because they have a huge experience with this. The first ever immersion cooling system, for mining that has like cool down using a liquid, even though the liquid was designed in the US at 3M, the first ever use case of that for mining was in Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's impressive.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive. Yeah, and so there's a lot of energy and a lot of things happening in that space, even now with obviously when Bitcoin was shooting through the roof in price, everyone in the world wanted to know what it was. But even now with Bitcoin, hovering, whatever, prices like, and even though the price of electricity has increased in Georgia to make standard mining, not super feasible, there's still a lot of interest in that space and a lot of people that are looking at that. And so, blockchain, and of course, blockchain is a subset of that, right? We're much more concerned about the use case of like public blockchain and a little bit less concerned about like cryptocurrency and the prices that you run that. But utilizing blockchain to make people's lives better, more transparent, more easy. Like you have people here in Georgia that are actively leaning into that kind of technology, and that's amazing. It's incredible.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your inspiring and insightful discussion. Amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's it for today.
Cool.
I think I'll have to invite you again in the future. Because
sorry, I started talking. I talk too much.
Please don't be sorry. Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video.
Absolutely.
Please, if you have any questions or whatever, the discussions is open in the comment section below, or you can add or connect to Andrew on LinkedIn.
Maybe you'll give my LinkedIn out or something. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I will.
Feel free to reach out for sure. I'd be happy to talk with you.
Thank you so much, and that's it for today. See you next time.